Just going sober doesn't help you to stay sober. It's all the other things with it. My relationship with alcohol started from when I was 13 and it always brought up a lot of demons and anger within me.
Right.
And I just always, whenever I drank, would drink loads. I could just drink and drink and drink. I didn't know how to express my hurt and my pain and what I was feeling. I would use alcohol and drugs to get that part of me out, but it would come out in really, extreme ways. I don't think just going sober is the answer. I think actually suddenly coming off drugs and alcohol, which is something which you've used as a tool to release, to suppress, doing that then without support and community, and someone can go sober and still be really unhappy.
Absolutely.
And actually they can go into quite a dark hole if they don't have these other things. That's why I think things like AA work really well, because it gives you that community, that bigger purpose, and the going sober. When I started to go sober and I started to perform, and I actually just started to meditate before, set an intention, I want to connect from my soul to the soul of everyone in that audience. I want to uplift people. I want people to leave feeling like they had an electric night, and then when I would get on stage, I'll be so much more present. And then actually I was way more wild. When I look back at my journey, I'm like, whoa, I'm a whole different version of myself. The negative thoughts that we have is like a pattern. We're like a computer and we go around these things, and I think it's just gradually changing that thing, and just to connect to more people, just to feel what's possible. I think that is so important. And also you've got creative outlets. I ended up writing a whole album about me going sober after I went sober, which massively helped me. Yeah. And then that connected me to loads of other people. People were reaching out to me saying, wow, I love your song. That really helped me. I was going to reach for a drink, but then I didn't.
Welcome to School of Rock Bottom with Oliver Mason. I'm an actor, a voiceover artist, and a recovery coach who's been sober 9 years. And I know firsthand that rock bottom can be the greatest teacher and the springboard for a beautiful life. And as you know, I interview fellow creatives and all inspiring people that have hit rock bottom, survived and thrived. This is a podcast of hope and how to get out of the darkness into the light. And that's why I'm so excited today, because I have got the amazing Jessica Wilde in the studio.
Hello.
Great to see you. Thanks for coming all the way from South London, I think, to see me, or wherever in the ether you may be.
Yes, I'm actually living in West London now, but yes, all the way from West London.
Well, thanks so much for coming to see me. Also, a big shout out to today's sponsor, Gavin Sisters. Head to the show notes now for 10% off their funky coffee and wellness retreats. Right, we're going to dive straight in. Quick bio. If you don't know who Jessica Wilde is, shame on you. You will do now. So Jessica Wilde is a South London artist known for raw, soul-searching vocals and sharp-witted spoken word, blending honesty and empowerment in every lyric. Her debut project felt like a diary, covering addiction, toxic relationships and wild nights, culminating in a powerful journey to self-love and sobriety. Now back with her new album, Teach Me How to Love, Jessica explores transformation and connection, earning airplay across BBC Radio 1, 1Extra and 6 Music, and press in Clash, Complex and more. She's collaborated with Rudimental, Amelie Sandé and Todd Terry, and hit major stages like Glastonbury and Soultown Festival. Wow. She also is the founder of Pussy Power, love that, spotlighting rising underground women with a Hootenanny residency. Wow.
Hootenanny is a music venue.
That's amazing. What a name. Fashion collab with Fame magazine and festival takeovers to her name. Wow, what an intro. I'd like you to take us to one of your rock bottom moments. And from there, we're going to get into the hope, the joy, the light, the recovery.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this. There's been a few rock bottom moments. But one of the most pivotal ones for me was actually a 3-week romance, which actually was very impactful for me. I don't know about you, but sometimes I've had really long relationships that have made a big impact, but sometimes I just have really short ones which just trigger something, and it just causes me to learn a big lesson or just to have some kind of transformation, and this was one of those ones. But yeah, I was doing a gig in like a really rundown, I think it was a hostel. I just done it to like get money. It was like Christmas covers. And this guy walked in who was like 6'5", really gorgeous, like among all the like older guys just with suits on, turning their back to me in my band singing. But yeah, he was really in it, and we basically ended up connecting. And we ended up having this 3-week, like really intense romance.
Yeah.
And it was pivotal for me because I'd been on a journey of really wanting to go sober now for a good few years. I started drinking really young, from 13. It was very self-sabotaging. And I was getting a very, very strong call that, like, in order to do what you need to do with your life, you need to be sober, especially with my music, with my creativity, and just my overall well-being and mental health. And yeah, I'd been on a journey and I felt so close, but then I kept having these relapses, and I would like go on a massive bender for 2 days and just like completely sabotage it all. But when I met this guy, I'd been sober now for a few months, and it just so happened that he was sober. And all my relationships in the past had been very like based around alcohol, drinking, addiction, in horrible loops. And one of the reasons I think why it was so pivotal is because I knew I didn't want to go back to those kind of relationships. Yeah. But what ended up happening with him is, in that short time, with him being sober, it actually, funnily enough, made me feel almost insecure. Like, it brought up all of the kind of unworthiness in me that I still needed to face, that I hadn't quite. And because of that, I ended up drinking quite a lot while I was with him.
Wow.
And actually for him, it became an issue, and he like rejected being intimate with me like a couple of times and stuff like this. But it really triggered like deep wounds in me, and all the stuff where it's like, you know, all that self-talk that like, see, Jessica, you want to transform your life, and here you are. Like, you know, It was just like all this stuff was coming up. And at the time, I didn't really realize it was almost like he was, you know, put there in that moment to really like give me a big lesson, to be like, it's now or never. Like, wow. This is it. And it just so happened that also, when he left really abruptly, like on Christmas Day. And funnily enough, I was going to the Amazon jungle the next day on Boxing Day. Right. Just a random alignment, you know, as you do, go to the Amazon jungle. But it was kind of perfect timing for me, because I was kind of heartbroken that he just up and left, and like really abruptly, and then I didn't hear from him. But when I was in the jungle, because I was completely, you know, cut off from society, deep in the jungle, it gave me this opportunity to really go deep within myself, and also not be around drugs or alcohol or anything like that. And actually after that, some massive shifts came in my life. And it's not that it was just down to him, but he was like that final thing where it was like a perfect mirror. It was like, do you want to be this person, or do you want to be a person who can be in a relationship with yourself and with other people, who really feels empowered and feels good about yourself? Because I knew I could never have relationships that I wanted or build the career that I wanted with that way that I was feeling about myself when I drank and got back into those cycles.
Wow. I mean, he really was a mirror, wasn't he?
Yeah.
That's astounding. It's quite interesting hearing your story there, because I think a lot of people might have expected that story to go something like, you know, I was in recovery and I was doing quite well, and then I met this guy and he was in active addiction, I relapsed, and it's his fault, and blah, blah, blah. But actually, it's almost like the polar opposite of that. You were sober. I think you'd done a few months. You met this guy who was also sober, but in order to deal with his sort of sobriety, if you like, because it was that mirror, you had to drink to cope with that, which is really interesting. And then you said something really inspiring, that he was sort of placed there, used the word placed there as part of your journey. Is that how you see it now? Sort of like almost he was sent to teach you something?
Yeah, definitely. Looking back, it was like, because it was funny, even after he left, because he left really abruptly on Christmas Day, and he'd like met my family, even though it was like a really short thing. It's like, you know, you suddenly like open your heart in this like infatuated land with someone for like 3 weeks, where he it brought up all these kind of like just I think drinking is often to cover up how we feel about ourselves. Like maybe stuff from childhood or whatever it is. But for me, by him even cutting like that, and the deep rejection wounds that came up around that as well, and around drinking, and, really reflecting on, whoa, who am I? And I still actually don't feel great about myself.
So do you see then every person, every relationship, and by relationship, I don't mean romantic necessarily, but do you sort of believe that every person that you meet is there to teach you something? Would you go as far as that?
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think it's just about, we don't have to think of it like that constantly. But like, for example, in the moment, you're not really thinking about it. But for example, when I look back, I was like, I wasn't thinking this at this time. I was like in this heartbreak. But then I went to the Amazon jungle, and it was more just like, then organically from that, something really beautiful happened. And I just suddenly lost the want to drink.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was in Peru, I just, there were opportunities where I could have, because I spent a week in the Amazon, and then I went to Cusco, and there were people going out clubbing and stuff, but I just suddenly didn't even feel the call to do it. Like,
it was almost like you lifted the obsession, or the experience lifted the obsession. The realization that you were done with drinking, something happened in that moment, didn't it?
Yeah, I'd had moments of it, like over those years. I'd been on quite a I guess maybe like a spiritual journey. I'd kind of fell into doing like yoga and meditation. I'd started to meet people around my area who were kind of from the area. So like in my eyes at that point, they were like cool people I could really relate with, but they were like doing yoga in like this. There was this guy called Felix who was he's a yoga teacher, but he was just from the area. He did it at this really like broke down gym. It wasn't like any kind of special gym, right? And I used to go there and do Muay Thai, and then we'd all go upstairs and do yoga. And in my eyes, yoga was like not cool at that point.
Right. Interesting.
But suddenly it was like, it was so relatable. And actually when I did this yoga, I felt really amazing. And actually here was people just from the area, like all
so
these.
You sort of had this spiritual connection prior to this moment, and you just sort of felt like alcohol was basically sort of taking you away from that.
Yeah, like my relationship with alcohol started from when I was 13, and it always brought up a lot of demons and anger within me.
Right.
And I just always, whenever I drank, would drink loads. I could just drink and drink and drink.
Was that like that straight away? I was going to ask you about your relationship with alcohol, because like you just generously shared, it started young at 13. Was it quite destructive from day dot, or did it progress, or how would you describe your relationship with alcohol from sort of 13 to maybe that moment that you just described?
Yeah, to be honest, from the first time I remember ever getting drunk, I just remember like this deep anger, maybe stuff that I was suppressing coming up in me. Yeah, but then I also found it like this massive release, because I think I suppressed a lot. Right. And when I was in my first long-term relationship, like from like 16 to 20, it really came out. And in that, because it was such a toxic relationship and I didn't know how to express my hurt and my pain and what I was feeling, I would use alcohol and drugs to get that like part of me out, but it would come out in like really, extreme ways. It's
really interesting because alcohol is actually, we all know it's a depressant, but it's also a stimulant as well, but only for a short period of time. And then and it sounds like it was kind of pushing a couple of buttons. Like on one hand, it was kind of like suppressing your anger, but then on another hand, I can relate to this. It's sort of like allowing you to feel it and get it out. Do you remember what you were angry about back then, 13?
No, like I remember punching a wall.
Wow.
And I didn't know why, but I remember it felt quite good.
Wow.
I think it's also like a societal thing. Like I think we're quite suppressed. And actually it's good to release. But what happens is because we're not taught how to release in a more healthy way and in a way that's supported, and we suppress a lot and then it comes out in really unhealthy ways. Like I feel like like almost the culture is a bit like, you live for the weekend and then you just go crazy on the weekend and then you feel like crap. But actually through my journey, I've kind of, learned other ways to process that.
You know what? I think a lot of people are going to be feeling quite seen or heard by what you've just said, because it's quite interesting. I said, do you remember what you felt angry about? And you can't really, it's not like you turn around to me and went, well, I was very angry about X, Y, Z from my childhood or that. You just felt angry. And I think that's a valid thing, isn't it? As human beings, there isn't always there is often, but there isn't always a sort of direct cause. Sometimes you can just feel these emotions for lots of different reasons, and they're not always obvious, right? And I think a lot of young people at 13 feel like that. Working with young people can feel really frustrated, but they're not quite sure why. Maybe it is those societal pressures that you talked about. So 13 through to that moment, did you just become more and more reliant on it as a coping strategy? And like you say, at the weekend, letting off steam?
Yeah, to be honest, it wasn't even like coping. It was like, whoa, this like wild energy. And me and my friends, at that point we used to go out and play in the streets. Like that was normal.
Yeah.
So it was just suddenly like as if you've been let free. Yep. And that's what I mean. I feel like when we're like condensed as humans, like we tend to explode in unhealthy ways. And I think that was what was happening for me. And like, so when me and my friends were drinking and doing, it was wild. Like we were out on the streets just like doing what we wanted, getting drunk. Obviously, we did get in trouble when we got caught and stuff, but it was a different time. But I think it was definitely a release at that time. But then...
Sorry to interject. I mean, I always used to call it a blowout.
Blowout, exactly. And that's what people call it. And you don't think, why do you call it that?
Exactly. I felt there was this pressure cooker that was building throughout the week, and I just had to like let it all out. Yeah. And boy, did I let it out. I mean, in the end, it was like the big bang. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So it sounds like for a long time, alcohol was quite useful for you, and I can relate to that. It helped you feel your anger, express anger, to let off steam. Do you remember at what point it sort of stopped working, for want of a better phrase, in terms of when did you start getting like consequences from it?
Wouldn't say it was useful. I just think I didn't know any other way.
Interesting, yeah.
Now I do. And I realize why even things like dancing, coming together in community, talking about what is going on. In other cultures, they have talking circles. They dance as a way of shifting energy. Like if there's problems going on, you might have like a talking circle, and everyone gets a chance to talk. You don't even interject. Everyone just gets a chance to share, and it's like it's more of a community setting, which I feel like community is kind of coming back, but because we don't know about those kind of ways, in especially here, like in London, it's very like out for yourself,
100%.
Go. Yep. That's why everyone's so like stressed and and then it's like then you have a blowout, whatever, and that's it's something I became very aware of, and through my sort of journey of then getting into yoga and stuff like that, and meditation and things like that, and even I used to go to women's circles. I just kind of fell into this world, and I suddenly found a new way of releasing, which is actually something people have done. Yeah, we just like lost touch with it.
Well, as you can see, I'm bigging up South Africa today, where my wife is from. There's an amazing expression in South Africa called Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. Yeah, which I think is beautiful. And I think you're right. I think in the West we put a big emphasis on the individual and sort of self-preservation, whereas in other cultures it's much more about the community and coming together. And it sounds to me, I mean, there's a lovely perspective about addiction, that the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think you're saying that really quite loudly, aren't you?
Yeah.
That actually it's about finding that. Before we get into that, because that's really interesting, just something you said in your rock bottom moment that I just wanted to maybe awkwardly pick you up on. Might be a tricky question. You said that the partner that you had at the moment didn't want to be intimate with you when you were drinking. Now that you're sober, do you understand why that was the case?
I completely relate.
Right. Why do you think so? Now,
because when you're drunk and when you're sober, you're on two different planes of reality. Yeah. And also something else that's happened from me being sober is my connection to people when I'm intimate with them is so much deeper. Sure. And I'm so much more present.
Yeah.
So if someone's drinking, you just can't be present. It takes you out of that thing. And actually I can't get into that deeper connection.
Sure.
And I think, and really it comes through me connecting deeper with myself. And that's what's happened. Yeah, and
it's amazing insight to have, and I can completely relate to that. Just picking up on the kind of chronological timeline of where we jumped off, you then went into the jungle, right? The Amazon jungle.
Yeah.
What happened in that jungle? Because there's, I think, some other things might have gone on, if you're comfortable to share.
Yeah, so that trip was with this guy called Paul Rosalie. It wasn't like a wellness trip or anything. My dad's actually an actor, and he wrote stories about when he used to travel South America in the 80s. He was very political. He was an activist. But he did these one-man shows that were really funny. But he also like got on these crazy adventures, like he got lost in the Amazon jungle. So I had this really strong pull from when I was little that I wanted to go to the Amazon jungle. So that was why that trip but it just happened to land at that moment when I was going through this massive transitional time in my life. As I say, when you look back, you're like, was that all somehow, planned?
Yeah.
But who knows? You can give it whatever meaning you want. Yeah, basically I had this pull to go and I ended up going at that point. But also when I was there, I went with this guy, Paul Rosalie, who's a conservationist. So he works to save the Amazon jungle. He's got a whole team. He's amazing. He's like Tarzan. But the trip was just to really experience the jungle. But I did end up doing ayahuasca when I was there as well.
Yep.
Which I did kind of want to do, but it wasn't part of the plan. I sort of surrendered to that. If I'm going to do it, it's going to happen, because if you don't know what ayahuasca is, it's like you call it a plant medicine.
Right.
Some people might perceive it as a drug. I perceive it as a plant medicine. And it's from the Amazon jungle.
Wow.
So, I ended up doing it there. It wasn't planned, but it ended up happening. And actually that again ended up being a pivotal part of, I think, my life really changing after that.
So for you, it was quite a positive thing in your healing process, that experience for you personally.
Yeah, I'd actually done it a few times before that, but that final one, something just like cemented. And I think also being in the Amazon jungle was like, I just felt so connected to nature and connected to something bigger than myself.
Wow.
And it was funny. It was the first one I did where it was just almost like this message of like, you're good.
Wow.
Like, you're okay. And I remember feeling like, which actually ended up inspiring my last album that I released. But this feeling of like, this message which was like, oh, I'm just a soul trying to be human. And it was like, when you look at it, this might sound woo-woo to some people, but for me, this was the kind of feeling that I got. It was like, oh, when you look at it that way, it's like, we're all trying to navigate this like human realm, right? We're like little kids, like exploring, making mistakes, learning, But when you look at it from the soul perspective, it's like, you just see it from a bigger picture and it's like, yeah, it hurts. Like, it really hurts. Sometimes some things happen and it hurts so much, but we always move through it.
Wow.
And there's always something to take from it if you allow yourself to.
Yeah.
And it was almost like this feeling of like, it's okay to feel it all. And that's again, that thing of like, suppressing the pain and stuff, and something that we do. And actually it's all part of it. Like the darkness is just as important as the light, like rock bottom, it's 100%. Like that's often where
I think it's really important that I have a diverse range of guests on the show with different experience. I've never set this podcast up to say, right, this is the way things are. It's always been about getting people like yourself, inspiring people that have hit a rock bottom and then bounce back, and really hearing your truth and what happened, and I think that's really important. Would I, as a recovery coach, sort of recommend taking that? I probably wouldn't, just to be honest. That isn't to kind of detract from your story.
Yeah.
But that's probably in a professional sense, I wouldn't. However, we cannot dispute the fact that for you personally, this has been a bit of a game changer and it's really helped you. And that can't be disputed. And so that's, that's a great thing to share because it's your truth, isn't it?
Yeah. And this is the thing, like, I wouldn't ever say you should definitely do this. I will always share what worked for me. And also for me, it wasn't just the ayahuasca. That was like a cherry on top of everything else I'd already been doing. Even meeting that guy had come off the back of me ended up going to this meditation class that I didn't want to go to. And I also had really severe eczema, which came up at the time when I'd started really going sober and started eating better and started meditating, but I was still having these relapses. It was like I was, when I started doing that, it was weird. Then my skin just exploded. And which was another part of the journey because it sort of like forced me again to look at all the kind of shit and be like, you're going to have to change stuff up. I
do think it's amazing. And I think you're really brave to share it as well. And And I think, it's really important to say that there are so many routes to recovery. And as soon as me or anyone else say, right, this is the way to do it, ego's gone completely crazy. There's so many different ways to do it. And I think that's going to be really encouraging to people, with the caveat that it can come with the danger for some people. But, it's amazing that it worked for you in the way that it did. I'm delighted it has.
That was off the back of also like all the other stuff I was doing. I was changing my mindset. I was eating healthy. Completely changed up my diet. I was really getting into like natural ways of healing through diet and through feeling better in my body, my mind was clearer, So it wasn't, I wouldn't never say, oh, it was just ayahuasca changed my life. That was one thing I did, which had a big impact on me. And not every experience I had with it was good, don't get me wrong.
You then went on a bit of a mission to find connection, I think, just kind of having a coffee with you before. Just sort of briefly, could you talk us through that? Because I think you had a brief stint in AA, in the rooms, and then you sort of found your own community. I wonder if you could just talk us through that, because I think that's quite an important message for people maybe looking for recovery listening to this.
Yeah, so I think, as I was saying, I sort of found community in my area who were doing yoga and stuff. My brother got me into Muay Thai, kickboxing.
Oh wow, cool. I'm going to mess with you then.
Don't mess with me.
Don't mess with you. Yeah.
And yeah, as I say, like for me, it was suddenly like I saw yoga and meditation in this whole new light, because it was like people from my area who I would never expect to be doing yoga were suddenly, this was like 10 years ago, by the way, like now it's cool. Now everyone's like yoga, but at this point, but what it did is it made it accessible for me as a young person, like seeing people who I really relate to suddenly doing yoga and and as I started to get into that, again, it kind of came at a time where I really wanted to change my life up. And I ended up meeting other people who I felt I could relate to, but was suddenly, connecting to this whole other world, this more spiritual world.
We talked about the 12-step recovery community briefly over a coffee, and you sort of said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that it was very useful for you at the beginning, and then you kind of found your own connection to something bigger outside of the rooms. Because one of the big things in 12-step fellowship is about finding a power greater than your addiction, right? And that can mean lots of things to different people. But it sounded like AA, for example, was really useful for you in the early days, but then you were able to find and connect to that power greater sort of outside of AA and 12-step, which I think is quite an important thing to say.
Yeah, so what had happened, is why I was telling you that, is through that, through the yoga, through the meditation, through the change in my diet, through being forced to, I had to fast for like 6 months to heal this horrible skin thing that I had. Right. All this kind of stuff. I found a connection to something bigger than myself. Wow. Even though I was still having relapses for over about 5 years. Then when LA Boy came along, it was like a final, I'd been on this journey, but I had this final like big relapse with him. And it was like all the kind of shit that I was still holding on to was like suddenly faced me, and I was like, oh, I need to, there's something here. And it was like but he was actually going to AA, which was a massive thing actually. So after I met him, when I got back from the Amazon jungle, I went to a few AA meetings, and I actually did really like it because I didn't expect it to be so much about that.
Yeah, sure.
And again, then you had the community aspect. Like you suddenly had a support of people who were all on this path. You were connecting to something bigger, but actually it was something I'd already been doing. Wow. So I'd connected with a lot of people who were kind of just, on that kind of path. And so I guess I went to a few meetings, but actually I just didn't feel compelled to keep going because I'd started attracting all these new friends and stuff who were like, going sober. A lot of my old friends started to fall away, and I suddenly had all these like amazing artists and creatives who were now sober, who had been on a similar path to me. And I guess I just didn't feel like I needed AA, and it wasn't even a conscious choice. I just didn't.
Well, it's amazing that you found a sober community that you can connect with regularly. I mean, that's something that you still do. I think your current living situation is with sober creatives. Am I right in thinking that? Is that what you said to me over coffee? I think? I mean, that's amazing. You know what I mean?
So it's funny, like something I've noticed is like when you start changing your inner world, it's like without even effort, everything around you starts to change to like reflect to who you are, Yeah. And so now I'm living in a new place called Ansol, which is it's these new community complexes. There's actually a lot more I've noticed in London of community becoming a thing. I don't know if you've noticed that.
No, but I want to know more about it because I'm all about it. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, but this it's run by the people. It was opened by the people who run Medicine Festival, which is actually a sober, more conscious spiritual festival that I performed at last year. And they've opened up this space, and you don't have to be sober to live there, but they don't sell alcohol. It's like cacao and they do coffee and all of that, but they got like saunas. People run, they have like yoga classes, breath work. So I'm there, I'm running like music of nights and vocal activation workshops, and I live there as well. But some people just live there, but they've just opened one in Shoreditch as well. I'm like totally promoting them now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But in the best possible way. Yeah, it's like I've only been living there a couple of months now, but yeah, it's like I think more and more people want that. They want community, and they want.
Well, the first word of step one is we. You know, and for me, that's the most important word in my recovery. And I always say to people, whatever that we looks like, it sounds a bit weird to say, is right. You know, if we can find a way to connect to other people, other sober people, and have them as part of our lives, then that's a massive win. And it sounds like not only have you managed to do that, but also in the creative space, you found that as well. Like that is really testament to you, because you really have to hunt these things down sometimes. You really got to hustle for your recovery sometimes. This episode is sponsored by Gavin Sisters, the passionate teetotal founders of the Detox Balm Retreat and the creators of Funky Coffee. If you love the taste of coffee but want to ditch the crash, Funky Coffee is your new go-to. Made from triple certified organic Arabica coffee and infused with powerful mushrooms, it gives you all the energy and none of the jitters. Plus, it's amazing for your gut, skin, and athletic performance. And if you're looking to recharge your body and mind, you've got to check out the Detox Barn. This award-winning retreat located in both the UK and the Algarve is a plant-based, alcohol-free sanctuary where you'll learn how to be healthier, happier, and more balanced. Whether it's for a weekend away or a full restorative retreat, just visit gavinsisters.co.uk and use the code School of Rock Bottom for 10% off your next retreat or a bag of their amazing Funky Coffee. That's School of Rock Bottom for a 10% discount for a healthier, happier you. Go check them out. Have you ever heard of Rat Park, that experiment Rat Park?
No.
That they did?
Yeah.
Anyone who doesn't know, they got some rats, they put them in cages, and they could either have water or they could have some drugs. There was actually a couple of experiments, one with these heroin, another one with cocaine. There was other ones as well. When they were on their own, they kept choosing the drugs until death, essentially. And then they created Rat Park, which was like heaven for rats. There was a rat community. They could have sex with other rats. There was things to do. And once they'd worked out which one was the water and which one was the drugs, they kept going back to the water and rejected the drugs, which really shows that if you've got purpose, connection, community.
Yeah. I don't think just going sober is the answer. I think actually suddenly coming off drugs and alcohol, which is something which you've used as a tool to release, to suppress it, doing that then without support and community and starting to, for me, what I've realized is someone can go sober and still be really unhappy.
Absolutely.
And actually they can go into quite a dark hole if they don't have these other things, because actually that's why I think things like AA work really well, because it gives you that community, that bigger purpose, and the going sober. That's the thing on top of the other things. And that's something I've realized. It really is like, it's a whole being thing. Yeah. Just going sober doesn't help you to stay sober. It's all the other things with it.
I agree with you completely. Yeah, a lot of people have this feeling like there's a sort of like a hole in the soul, there's something missing, and then you try and fill it up with all these things, internet, food, drugs, alcohol, relationships. And what happens is the more you stuff it, the bigger the hole gets. And then you take all those things away and you're left with this chasm, Yeah. And then just thinking stopping drinking will arrest it. Often that isn't enough. Like you say, there's got to be other things. I think you've highlighted beautifully what those other things can look like. I'm a bit curious about your name. Were you born with the surname Wilde?
No, but I feel like it is my name now. I don't tell anyone my government name anymore.
That's all right. I don't need to know. So was it born out of sort of a wild side, wild nights out, being a party animal?
It was to a degree, because it came to me I actually I was featured on this dance track a few years ago, and I went to do a PA show before I went sober in Vauxhall, which is, I don't know if you know about Vauxhall clubs, but they're infamous because they go on all night. It's like kind of the Berlin of London.
There's actually a sober club in Vauxhall now.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah, you can go clubbing at 2 in the afternoon.
Times are changing. Yeah. But at that point, basically I wasn't going to drink, but then they ended up having loads of free alcohol there, and I ended up singing and performing, and then I ended up out in Vauxhall for 2 days straight. Missed my Mother's Day meal.
Yeah.
Like it got wild.
Yeah.
But within that time, I just remember being off my face, and I kept talking about Oscar Wilde.
Okay.
I know, it's so random.
Love it.
But he's quite a deep philosophical person, and I think, I can't even remember why it was, but there was something about his story that had really touched me at that time. And I was, this is the thing when you drink and stuff, like, I could get fixated on something and like
totally relate.
Talk someone's ear off about it. But it actually ended up being quite pivotal, because I ended up, I think I was pretty wild, and like, ended up in Vauxhall clubs for 2 days.
But am I right in saying that you can now go to wild nights? You know, you can go out and you can party sober. And I think also I'm right in saying that you don't really think about alcohol or in any meaningful way anymore. You can go out, party, be around people drinking and still have a good time. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. I think I don't really go to clubs so much anymore. I'm a bit more picky.
Sure.
Because back in the day, actually, even if the club wasn't that great, I would just get off my face and then, have an all right night. But now I'm a lot more aware of, like, is the music hitting? Are the people hitting? I performed at Glastonbury last year.
That's amazing.
Which I did the whole 5 days sober.
Amazing.
And it was amazing. And I was performing on the last night as well. So I had that as a drive to, like, you got to be on point,
Yeah.
Because it was a big show. It was on an amazing stage. And all of the people around me were drinking and, getting on it. But actually, I had a great time.
How do you feel when you see other people drinking? Or I can't be around people using drugs, I have to say. I remove myself completely from that scenario. But obviously, I'm around people drinking all the time. Mm-hmm. How are you around sort of people taking drugs and drinking and that whole vibe?
Again, I think it depends on the energy, something about Glastonbury, because it's out and everyone's so joyful and it's all to do with live music and you're in nature. I don't know, there's a different energy. Don't get me wrong, like sometimes I looked at people, I was like, whoa, is that what I looked like? Like completely burning their face off, and I'm like, oh my God. But for the people who were just on good vibes and like dancing and to like that, I found it all right. But there was certain points where I was like, God, I could do with, maybe a little something to like be in the vibe. But then it was just like, nah, because...
You're right, though, because, the main reason that people are there actually is about the music. And actually, I found that alcohol really started to blunt me from everything. I mean, one of my big ones used to be going to watch Arsenal, down the Emirates or Highbury, and getting absolutely bladdered and going there and then having to watch Match of the Day later in the evening because I couldn't remember the game.
Yeah.
So I had all these ideas that drinking was about going to gigs, doing all these things, and it helped. But the reality was it just numbed me to it. I didn't really experience it at all. I wasn't even there. Yeah. Really.
Yeah, exactly. And actually that was something I was going to say. When I used to perform, I used to always drink before I performed because I thought that it gave me confidence, and also I'm quite wild when I perform. It's another thing that came from when I'm on stage. It's like my spirit comes out. It's like, I'm known for like hair flicking and just really like, I don't know, it's another release for me where that side of me can come out. But I used to get drunk and then actually sometimes it wouldn't be good. And then when I started to go sober and I started to perform, and I actually just started to meditate before, set an intention, like I want to connect from my soul to the soul of everyone in that audience. I want to like uplift people. I want people to leave feeling like, like they had an electric night, and then when I would get on stage, I'll be so much more present. And then actually I was way more wild when I used to drink, but in a centered, focused way and more connected way, you know?
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
You know, often when I'm working in rehabs or, you know, working with people in early recovery, they're like, "Are you sure you're not on something?" Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you know, because I still say that sobriety is the best drug or drink I've ever taken, you know, because you're feeling everything every second in full HD. There is no numbing that. That is in terms of sort of like ongoing maintenance, you know, I'm sort of aware that, you know, there's a big distance between me and a drink today. But for me, there's, you know, unless I do certain things on a daily basis, I sort of feel that I could slowly drift towards having a drink in my hand again. Is there anything that you sort of do on a daily basis that kind of helps you stay in this great place that you're clearly in? Is there anything you mindfully have to do?
There's many kind of tools I've picked up over the years. So like kickboxing, I really got into Muay Thai, yoga, exercising. Also, like I turn my phone on airplane mode when I go to bed, and like in the morning I have some time before I start my day where I might do a little meditation. I might have a cold shower, I might do breathing. Yeah, journaling, like all this kind of stuff. I think for me, I have to keep on top of that. There's so many different tools I've picked up over the years, but these are some of the things that I'll do in the morning and before I go to bed.
Do you struggle with that on waking? Because I find that when I do exactly what you just described, my mental health is so good. But I have a battle every morning to not just reach for the phone and go straight into like, you know, notifications and all that. Yeah. Do you struggle with that, or is that
my
just
phone's on airplane mode?
It's amazing.
So I don't take it off for the first part, and really then I do my stuff before I put it on, and then when I come onto it, I'm more ready. You're more ready. I agree with you. Sometimes there's even podcasts or stuff I'll listen to, but I'll put it on my laptop. Sometimes I don't have as long in the morning, but like I always have something that I do.
This and work is my final vice. You know, if I could chuck this thing in the bin, I would actually.
I know some people as well, like, you know, they have kids and sometimes they don't feel like they have that luxury and stuff. But I think it's just getting, you know, we're beings of patterns. So the more we do, it really is for me like the little things that, I can have these big moments like when that guy came into my life. But it wasn't just that. I've been doing lots of things every day leading up to that moment, and then when the big things hit, it's like it creates a big shift. But for me, the little things each day are the big things. And I think we mentioned you're probably going to, but I ended up creating a platform called Pussy Power. Let's talk about Pussy Power while we're here. When I went sober, I got dropped. I was with a record label, a big record label. I got dropped. I didn't want to be in it anymore because I didn't have creative control. And when I ended up going independent, I ended up writing an album about going sober. And then I also started Pussy Power. This was in 2020 when lockdown happened.
Wow. And all these links, by the way, will be in the show notes. So, 100%.
And basically it ended up becoming a platform. It was mainly to spotlight female artists in soul, R&B, hip hop, because that's the kind of style of music that I do as well. My mum's a jazz singer, my brother's a jungle MC, so I kind of, and I rap and I sing, so, and I produce.
If you ever have a family party, if I can be invited, that sounds like it sounds like a good night.
So I basically started Pussy Power in lockdown actually with this character called your girl Charlene. So I come from an acting background as well, and I just bought this pink wig off Amazon. I think I was bored from being in my bedroom in lockdown.
It's amazing. I love it.
And I started a Spotify playlist called Pussy Power where I put all my favourite up-and-coming female artists. Wow. And then I started reacting to the songs as this character. Your girl Charlene, and she wears a pink bob wig.
Is this still online, by the way?
This is all online. You can go on my Instagram. Pussy Power's got its own Instagram.
Go check out the link now in the show notes. When you're done with this episode, I'm going to be checking it out as well.
But and then I turned it into an IG live series during lockdown where I would interview female artists from the playlist. And then I would introduce the character. Charlene would then introduce my alter ego and introduce me to come on and sing. And it basically turned into I got offered a show at Hootenanny Brixton once lockdown finished. They offered me a headline show, and I said, look, I want a headline, but what do you think of this Pussy Power concept? And it was basically like Charlene hosts, I perform on the night with my band, and then I have all these amazing female guest artists.
Wow.
But the night just kind of organically, I think because I was on a bit of such a healing journey, like even with Pussy Power, it was really about finding your power. It wasn't actually so much sexual, even though it sounds like that. There was an element of that, don't get me wrong. It's about being a woman and owning who you are and your sexual power and all of this.
Yeah.
But men love to come to the nights as well, because it was really like, even the artists that got attracted to it, a lot of them, like my friend Zoe Capri, who's featured on one of my songs, like she does a lot of soul music and a lot of her themes are very transformational and uplifting. And I didn't purposely mean for it to be like that, but organically it attracted artists like that who were in soul and R&B and the Charlene aspect would add a kind of comedic element to it as well. But it was always very much about coming together in community, the power of music, finding your own power. And we'd make a joke, you know, that even men can find some pussy power inside. And, you know, Charlene's there to help them. We might need to chat afterwards about how I find that. But yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
But
yeah, it's really about coming together and like, and that, letting go, dancing, the healing power of music and coming together and releasing and not in a way where we have to have a blowout and become so drunk, because the night is so immersive. Like you're laughing at Charlene, then I perform, and it's like with the whole live band, all of the acts, it's like live music and dancing and all of the power of that. And people would really leave the nights, and the feedback I would get with that, it was just like, you know, electric, and they'd feel really uplifted and together.
I think sobriety really kind of gives you the space to find what your purpose is, you know, and it's amazing how passionate you are about all the things that you're doing, which is what life should be about.
Yeah.
Community, purpose, finding a sense of connection, you know, all of these seem to be kind of the building blocks for kind of your sobriety and your life. You know, there's a real glint in your eye as well. Ever since I've met Jessica today, you know, you can really see that you're connected to the light, which is an amazing thing. Sounds like you've got a real inner faith that there's you said earlier on that we're kind of like souls having a physical experience or something like that. I can relate to that journey as well. I came into recovery sort of quite pretty much an atheist, really, kind of quite blinkered to any other sort of concept, and that definitely has changed over the years. You mentioned you earlier struggling and sort of being in and out of recovery and sort of relapsing and stuff like that. If someone's watching or listening to this who's in that kind of toxic pattern, well, not necessarily toxic, sometimes we need to be in that pattern regardless, and they're feeling a bit hopeless and stuck, have you got a kind of sound bite, something that you could say to that person to keep trying? What kind of hope could you give them?
I've been there. And yeah, when I look back at my journey, I'm like, whoa, I'm a whole different version of myself. And I would just say it really is about taking the pressure off. And it really is like those little tiny things that you do over and over. And even if it's just today, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to journal. I'm going to have a cold shower. I'm going to take a minute to breathe before I start my day. And it's also just that choice. It's like you have to, the negative thoughts that we have is like a pattern. We're like a computer and we go around these things, and I think it's just like gradually changing that thing and just, yeah. And I think also, like, you know, as I say, I don't think it's just the going sober. So I think going to something like AA, if that works for you, even if it's just for a little while, just to connect to more people, just to feel what's possible. I think that is so important. And also you've got creative outlets. You know, I ended up writing a whole album about me going sober after I went sober, which massively helped me. Yeah. And then that connected me to loads of other people. People were reaching out to me saying, wow, I love your song. Like, that really helped me. I was going to reach for a drink, but then I didn't.
Isn't it amazing as well, the ways that you can help others, you know, whether it's through music or drama, podcasts, within the 12-step community, therapy, whatever it is, there's so many ways that you can give back and help others. And it's amazing that you've used music to do that.
Yes.
It's an incredible thing. I'm really sorry, we're out of time.
No worries.
I'm gutted. Do you know what I love about this podcast is that I now get to meet people that I don't know personally. You know, we've had a nice hour. You know, you're such a good egg, such a lovely person. It's been a real pleasure to kind of spend the last couple of hours with you. And I just wish you everything of the best going forward, because you're a really lovely human, and I wish you every joy, success and love to come your way.
Thank you.
I really mean
Appreciate
that.
You. Yeah, thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. Guys, head to the show notes now. Loads on Jessica there. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star review, write a comment, give us a review, whatever it can be. If it's YouTube, hit subscribe, leave us a comment so we know how you found this episode. And of course, I haven't let you down yet. I'm going to see you with a brand new episode in 2 weeks' time. Until then, look after yourself, and thanks for watching or listening.